It's been reported that there are several cases of species dysphoria being dealt with in schools in Scotland. In other words, children who are saying they are not human but of a different species, or identifying as a different species, and these pupils are being supported by the schools, whatever that means. We'll talk about that a little later. But one case in particular has hit the headlines this week, and this is about a pupil who identifies as, believes that they are, a wolf. Now, this is a real situation. There have been others in Scotland that have been rumours, but when it's come down to it, schools have denied it. But in this case, the council has issued a statement about it, and it's real. The identity of the pupil is known to the media, but they're not releasing that for obvious reasons. So where's this trend coming from? Children identifying as animals, or furries as they're referred to. Well, I think there's four factors, I think, in the background. The main one, obviously, is the philosophy of transgenderism, because the furry identified as an animal just seems like a logical, using that term in the loosest sense, a logical next step to it. Because if you think the definition of a woman is adult human female or person who identifies as a woman, then what's the definition of a wolf? Well, it's a wolf or a person who identifies as a wolf. So with transgender philosophy, gender identity can float free of biological sex. With the species version, then your species identity can float free from your biological species. Now, you might say, oh, but people just need to wake up. It's just not true. It's not true. But people who've adopted this philosophy, they think identify as trumps actually are. So when you say to them, but you're actually not a wolf, you're actually not a man, you're actually not a woman, they're thinking, well, that doesn't really mean anything. That doesn't make sense. Because as far as they're concerned, what you actually are is determined by what you identify as. So we've got to just reject this philosophy that identifies as encapsulates or expresses the supreme reality, and other considerations like reality are subordinate to it. We've got to just reject this whole philosophy. And you can see that this furries trend is the next step of this identity philosophy. Now, we've already seen it expand in some other directions. We've had sex, obviously, but also age. You've got people who identify as being a different age. You've got people who identify as being a different race. What's going to come next, do you think? Well, animals, obviously. What else could be coming down the line? You could have someone identifying as a particular individual. I am Napoleon. I identify as a doctor, or whatever. Or people are going to start identifying as inanimate objects. I am a robot. I am the sun. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're on the slippery slope and no one quite knows what's at the bottom, apart from it's going to be a complete mess. Right, number two. Being more brief with this one. I think anthropomorphic cartoons have quite an influence on young people. By anthropomorphic, I mean cartoons where the characters are animals, but they act like people. And you relate to them as though they were people. And as children, they might fantasize, imagine themselves, it would be really, there's fantasy. They imagine that they could be one of these animals and have the sort of adventures that these animals have in films. So that factors in the background. I'm not saying in the slightest that such films should be banned or, there's anything wrong with them. I think take away the transgender philosophy, then these films are not going to do any harm. But put these films in the context of a society where the message is you can be whatever you decide to identify as, then I think they take on a different meaning for some children. I think another factor in the background as well, number three, is the animal rights movement. That's very strong at the moment. There's a big move towards equality between animals and humans. And if you don't agree with that, then you're a speciesist. So animals are oppressed and they need to be liberated. They need to have equality with humans. We need to break down the barriers between animals and humans and treat each other the same. Well, you can see the sort of direction that's heading in as well. And then the last factor, it's a very significant one indeed, it's just fashion. Kids will hear about other children or adults even who identify as animals, and they might think, I quite fancy that. I really like wolves. I really like cats or whatever. Maybe I'll give that a try as well. It sounds fun. Sometimes I imagine being a cat, so maybe I'll give this a try. And then they might get deeper into online communities where the message will be, you are a cat. This is definitely what you need to do. This is your route to happiness. And if anyone tells you otherwise, then they're oppressing you, they're taking away your right to be who you really are. And then also this intersects with the LGBT movement as well. You see pride events, people dressing up as animals as well. Well, we won't go into that any further. So when it says these schools are supporting children with these issues, I wonder what supporting means. That the newspaper report said that the child was being allowed to identify. Now, what could that mean? That could mean dress. How did you dress up as a wolf? I don't know. Maybe you wear nothing. I don't know. Maybe you wear a fur mask. Maybe some sort of wolfy name the person's going by. Maybe teachers and other pupils are being told they have to agree with the person when they say they're a wolf. They're not allowed to disagree with this, which is a very difficult situation for teachers, and I think is miseducation for children if that's what's going on. If children are being forced to go along with the delusion, I think that's destructive to the children's sense of reality, and it's going to tend to lead them into it as well. And it also is modelling an incorrect way of dealing with someone with a problem like this. So we're not quite sure what's going on in the schools under the banner of support. What should be going on in terms of support is staff in particular saying to this pupil, no, it's not true, you're not a wolf, we're not going to play this game with you, so you can forget that. We're not going to allow you to do anything different in school on the basis of this, because you're a child, you're a human, so we're not having any of this nonsense. And then also alongside that, look at any other problems. Maybe this pupil or these pupils having these issues, maybe there are other mental health problems, maybe there are other issues in their lives, so they can be dealt with sympathetically as any other issue can. Now, if Jordan Peterson was talking about this, he'd use the term undifferentiated compassion to describe the likely response of some schools to this. I've tended to use the word just out of control empathy, just empathy at the heart of everything and overwhelming all other considerations. So what that comes down to is you've got a pupil with a problem, and the tendency will be towards thinking what's going to make this pupil happier for the next 10 minutes. And you do whatever's going to make them happiest for the next 10 minutes. Or you say to them, what do you want? What do you think would help you? And whatever they say, that's what you do. But in a case like this, that is absolutely the wrong approach. So if you say to this child who thinks they're a wolf, what would you like us to do? How could we help? Then they'll say, oh, well, I want you to all go along with it. I want you to do various things that will fuel my delusion that I'm a wolf. And if you're in the sort of empathy comes first, the overwhelming compassion, that's what drives it, then they're likely to say, okay, well, if that's what they want, that must be what's best for them. Because the suggestion that the adults know best, and sometimes the adults know best and the children are wrong, and the adults need to take control and tell the children the way it's going to be, that is just anathema in the Scottish establishment. That's like heresy of the highest order. And the policies are skewed on the basis of that. Now, I'd be interested to know what's going on with parents in this case as well, in these cases. I would imagine a lot of cases, in virtually all cases, when the parents find out that their child is identifying as a wolf or a cat or whatever, there are not many parents who will be thinking, oh, fantastic, that's really what we wanted for our child. I think they'll actually be thinking, oh no, what is going on here? Something's going wrong, let's try and get them back on track, and let's just have this sort of phase that's all tied up and let's leave it behind as soon as possible. That's what parents will be thinking. Whereas will schools be thinking, oh, that's an unsupportive parent. We'll invite the parents into a meeting, because that's what Scottish education policy says. If there's an issue, then parents should have some input into the decision-making process. They can have a seat at the table while we, the professionals, actually decide what's going to happen. So parents might be brought in, but the professionals, the schools, will be calling the shots ultimately, and we will end up in situations, it's easy to foresee, where parents will be described as unsupportive, and children will be encouraged to see their parents as unsupportive if they won't go along with these delusions. I haven't heard a word like furry phobic or whatever yet, but it'll come soon. There will be a term soon to deride and demonize people who say, whoa, this is not true. You're not a wolf, you're not a cat, you're a person. Let's just forget about this nonsense, shall we? So they haven't defined a phobia for it yet, but give it time. Now, just on a slightly related issue, I'm currently in an exchange with Highland Council. It's actually gone beyond Highland Council now. They've rejected my complaint. My complaint is that one of their school's libraries was stocking a book that basically endorsed sexual orientation that encompassed attraction to different species. Let's not say any more about it than that. And Highland Council have replied saying basically there's no problem with this. That book is staying in the library because it's in line with the Curriculum for Excellence and LGBT legislation. And that complaint is ongoing. So again, it's another sign of this blurring of the proper boundaries between animals and humans. But there'll be more of that story as it goes on. There's also another story about blurring the boundaries between animals and humans that I'll be covering in a video probably tomorrow. So keep an eye open for that one. Right, do get your tickets for our conference on the 9th of November, link below. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.